Single dad CO discovers shocking secret about little girl found in trash on Christmas Eve. It was a night that promised warmth and joy. Christmas Eve was a time for family, laughter, and celebrations. Yet, in the shadows of a bustling city, a chilling discovery unfolded, one that would flip a life upside down. A little girl, not much older than 5, was discovered wrapped in nothing but a thin, tattered blanket, lying in a trash bin, just a stone's throw from a cozy diner where families gathered for dinner. Her small body shivered amidst the cold, her round eyes glistening with unshed tears, staring wide with confusion. The diners gasped, their cheerful chatter silenced into gasps of horror. Whispers of disbelief rippled through the crowd. As the sirens wailed louder, a single figure advanced through the gathering crowd. His name was Jake, a single dad, and the CEO of a booming tech startup. He had everything: a sleek car, a fancy home, all the perks of a successful career, but in that moment, he became something else entirely. A desperate father. His heart raced. A lump formed in his throat as he heard the little girl's muffled cries. "Where's your mom?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She looked up at him with those huge, tear-streaked eyes, as if searching his face for an answer. The cold wind whipped around them, carrying with it the smell of pine and cinnamon from the holiday spirit bursting at the diner. It felt surreal. Was this some sick nightmare? He glanced back at the onlookers' faces frozen in shock, sympathy, and horror. Then it happened. Just as Jake took a step closer, a heavy-set officer shouted, "Everyone back! You have no idea what you're getting into." Hushed murmurs darted through the crowd. What could that mean? Who would do such a thing? Panic prickled Jake's skin. He turned back to the child, who suddenly clutched his pant leg, her tiny fingers trembling with fear. He felt an electric jolt, a magnetism pulling him into her world, a world of pain and mystery. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The officer stepped closer, eyes narrowing at Jake. "You need to leave, sir. It's not safe." Jake hesitated. Was it the scene, the way the child looked at him, or was it the desperate whisper of fate calling his name? In a flash of instinct, he knelt down, meeting the little girl's gaze. "What is your name?" "Annie," she replied, her voice like a broken whisper. But right then, that glimmer of hope shattered. The officer's radio crackled to life, the words buzzing through the air like ghostly echoes. "Possible connection to a kidnapping in progress," it crackled. What did that mean? Panic ignited in the back of Jake's mind. Why had she been tossed away like garbage? What secrets lay buried under her innocent gaze? All he knew for certain was he couldn't just walk away. A bond sparked between them, something unmistakable. But now, with the police swirling chaos around him, what was he going to do? There were more questions than answers, and as he stood there, everything in his life began spinning out of control. Little Annie was about to reveal something that would change everything, and Jake's world was only just beginning to unravel. What secret lurked beneath the surface? What did he just stumble into? Jake's heart raced, caught in the whirlwind of chaos surrounding Annie. The officer's command felt like a slap, snapping him back to reality, the harsh truth of the situation pressing down on him. How could anyone abandon a child like this? He swallowed hard, forcing the knot in his throat to loosen. The crowd surged behind him, a sea of concerned faces, but all Jake could concentrate on was Annie. "What happened to you, little one?" he murmured, trying to keep his voice steady. She flinched, her fingers tightening around his leg. He noticed her eyes darting to the police lights flashing ominously in the night. "They came, they took me," her voice cracked, words tumbling out like she feared being overheard. "But I ran. I ran and hid." Jake's breath hitched as he glanced toward the officer, who was barking orders into a radio, oblivious to the heartache unfolding just a few feet away. "Who came?" he pressed, leaning closer, desperate now. "Was it a man? A woman?" Annie's eyes widened as she seemed to grapple with her thoughts, struggling to make sense of a world she so helplessly inhabited. "Dark clothes, they were mean," she whispered, her small hands shaking. "I was scared. They wanted to take me, but I didn't let them." Each word sank into Jake like stones in his stomach. What kind of monster would do this? He felt a surge of anger. There was no way he could walk away from her. No way he could leave her in the hands of fate and those who seemed completely consumed by the urgency of the moment. "I won't let anyone hurt you, Annie," he promised, his voice firmer than he felt. Just then, another shout broke through the din. "We need to clear the area. Back. Now!" The urgency increased, and the uniformed officers began pushing through the crowd, their determination palpable. It was like a dam about to burst. There is something more going on than just a sad girl in a trash bin, Jake thought, urgency clawing at him. He scanned the faces pressed against the barricades, searching for any signs of a familiar face. Then, he spotted a figure lurking just outside the glimmer of the police lights. Someone with dark clothing hovering at the edge. Jake's instincts flared. Was this one of the people Annie had been trying to escape? His heart thundered in his chest as adrenaline surged, urging him to act. "Stay close to me, Annie," he said, tightening his grip. "I need you to trust me." They began moving through the crowd, Jake guiding Annie, as he tried to find a way past the officers. Whispers echoed. "Did you hear about the kidnapping? Who could do something so cruel?" Each statement solidified Jake's determination. The fear in Annie's eyes mirrored a terror he'd never wished to witness in a child. "Why were you in the trash?" he gently asked as they shuffled close to the diner. Her eyes flashed with pain. "Because they said I was trash," she said, her voice falling to a faint whisper. "They said nobody would want me." An icy chill swept through Jake, a raw wave of anguish and rage melded together. To be cast aside like that was unfathomable. Suddenly, a shrill scream pierced the night, cutting through the fog of confusion. "There!" someone shouted, and chaos erupted. "Do you see him?" an officer yelled, drawing his weapon, pointing toward the shadowy figure lurking nearby. Jake's chest tightened. He could feel it, the threat was real, and Annie was entwined in it. "Annie! We have to go now," he urged, but she hesitated, fear anchoring her in place. "Dad!" a voice called out from behind them. Jake whipped around to find a familiar face. "Ben?" Jake said incredulously. "What are you doing here?" But before Ben could answer, the dark figure bolted, disappearing around a corner, igniting a surge of instincts in Jake. He looked at Annie, and then back to Ben. "We have to follow him. He knows something." "Are you sure?" Ben hesitated, concern etched across his face. "Absolutely," Jake replied, determination fueling his words. Taking a deep breath, they started off, but Jake could already sense something much more sinister at play. What were they running into? What had he just stumbled upon? The air crackled with tension as they pursued the dark figure, and Jake's gut instinct screamed that they were digging into a nightmare far deeper than anyone imagined. But in the pit of his stomach, a question loomed larger than the chase itself. Would he be able to protect Annie from whatever darkness had cast her away? Time seemed to slip away as they navigated the shadows, and Jake knew there was no turning back now. What hidden dangers awaited them just around the bend? The alley wrapped them in a cloak of darkness as Jake, Ben, and Annie sprinted after the fleeing figure. The fluorescent lights of the diner flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the gritty walls. Jake's heart pounded like a war drum. Each step echoed off the damp concrete, amplifying the urgency in his veins. "Stay close," he insisted, glancing back at Annie. She seemed fragile, yet there was a fire in her eyes, a determination that made her more than just a scared little girl. She'd survived long enough to escape, and Jake admired her inner strength. Ahead, the shadow darted left, then right. It was fast, moving like a phantom through the narrow passageways. Jake felt a primal instinct draw him closer, a need to unravel this mystery. "Why did you run?" he shouted, but the figure didn't pause. It only spurred Jake on, urgency tinged with fear. That voice was holding secrets about Annie. "Jake!" Ben shouted, nearly tripping over a loose brick. "Slow down. We need a plan." "Plan?" Jake barked back. "We don't have time for a plan." The adrenaline surged as they rounded the corner, and his eyes widened in disbelief. The figure stood at the mouth of another alley, panting and cornered. Jake's thoughts raced. This was their chance. As they approached, the figure turned slightly, revealing a face that froze Jake in place. It was a young woman, pale and wide-eyed, someone who looked far too terrified to be dangerous. "Please," she gasped, raising her hands slightly in surrender. "I didn't mean to. I was just trying to help." Jake slowed down, his instincts fighting against the primal need for action. "Help? Help who?" The woman glanced nervously at Annie, her gaze softening. "Her. I saw them take her. They said they wanted her for what?" Ben interjected, moving closer. Who took her?" "Hush," Jake commanded. "We don't know if they're still close." The woman pressed her back against the cold brick wall. The men in the dark clothes, they were coming to take her to some kind of auction. An auction? Jake felt as if the ground fell from under him. "What are you talking about?" "I overheard them. They were planning it for Christmas," she stammered. "I thought she was lost, and I wanted to save her. But I never thought I ran when they saw me." Annie stepped forward, her small figure trembling. "What kind of auction?" The woman's eyes darted nervously again before she answered, "A place where they sell kids." "No!" Annie gasped, clutching Jake's leg tighter. His gut twisted. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Jake pressed. "I was scared they wouldn't believe me. I thought if I could get her free, I could help," the woman cried. "You have to trust me." Jake wanted to believe her, wanted to feel reassured, but the world had twisted in a way that made trust feel dangerous. He looked back at Ben, who seemed tense as well. "Is this the truth?" Jake asked quietly, feeling the weight of Annie's gaze upon him. "Can we trust you?" "I swear. I just need you to believe me." The desperation in her voice rang painfully true. "They'll all be looking for me, too." The words hung heavy in the air. Who exactly was coming? Jake's gut twisted tighter. They needed a decision, and they needed it fast. "Annie, I'm not going anywhere until we know what is going on," Jake said firmly, but his heart sank when he noticed anxiety flashing across Annie's face. "Can we trust her?" Just then, the haunting sound of sirens broke through the tension, drawing ever closer. The woman's eyes widened in panic. "They're coming!" "Think, Jake, think," he thought desperately. "This could be their salvation, or their doom." "Let us go back," Ben urged. "We need to inform the cops." "No," Jake declared. "Annie's not safe there if they're after her. We have to do something now." The woman's breath was quickening. "They won't stop until they find her. You need to hide her. They won't stop looking, even if they don't find me." Jake's heart raced as he weighed their options against the ticking clock. "Hide? Where?" he snapped. The urgency climbed higher with each passing second. Then, as if fate were mocking him, a skate clattered to the ground nearby, shattering the silence. They looked, wide-eyed, as shadows moved toward them, dark and purposeful. The chase that had brought them here now spiraled into a darker abyss. "Jake, we have to go." He felt a wave of determination crash over him. Whatever these people wanted with Annie, he wouldn't let them have her. But the question loomed in his mind, could they outsmart the danger closing in fast? With every heartbeat echoing in his ears, Jake knew they needed to run, but where? The darkness closed in around them, and the air thickened with fear. Would they find safety, or only more danger as time slipped through their fingers? The shadows morphed around them, elongating as the sirens drew closer. Jake's mind raced through the alleyways, searching for an escape route. The woman's fear mirrored his own, her pale face illuminated by the flickering light behind them. "Over there!" she shouted, gesturing toward a narrow passage that seemed to fade into the darkness. It was a gamble, but they had no choice. "It leads to the old warehouse. We can hide there." "Let us go," Jake said, grabbing Annie's hand, pulling her close as they plunged into the gloom. He could hear Ben's quick breaths right behind him, a calming presence amidst the chaos. The pathway was tight, walls covered in grime, and the smell of something long decayed. Annie kept close, her small body trembling with each quickened step. "Jake, what if they find us?" she whispered, panic rising in her voice. "They won't," he reassured, though doubts gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. They emerged on the other side into a small clearing, a decrepit warehouse looming over them like a forgotten giant. The sight was both imposing and oddly comforting. It felt like a fortress against the world. "Inside," the woman urged, darting ahead. The door creaked ominously as they entered, shadows pooling in the corners. It was a maze of old crates and discarded furniture. "What now?" Ben whispered, scanning the darkness. "We wait," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the uncertainty clawing at his gut. "We'll figure out what to do next." As they found a spot behind a stack of crates, a flood of thoughts invaded Jake's mind. Who were the men after Annie? And what did they mean by an auction? Questions swirled, mixed with fear for Annie's safety. Suddenly, there was a sound outside, heavy footsteps followed by hushed voices. Jake's breath hitched. They were here. "Please, don't let them find me," Annie squeaked, her grip tightening around Jake's hand. "Stay quiet," he whispered, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. The tension in the air was thick. It felt like a predator circling its prey. The voices came closer, growing clearer. "We need to search this place. She could be anywhere," a deep voice grumbled. Jake's heart sank. The fear was palpable, crashing over them like a wave. "We need a way out," he thought desperately, scanning the dim light spilling through the cracks in the walls. The group stepped deeper into the darkness, still unaware of their presence. Jake felt his pulse quicken. He had to protect Annie, but hiding wasn't a long-term solution. He needed to make a plan. "There's a back door," the woman breathed, nodding toward the rear of the warehouse. "If we can reach it, we might get away." With one last glance at the approaching danger, Jake nodded firmly. "Okay, we move on my count." On 3, just as he started to count down, the warehouse door slammed open. "Search everywhere," the heavy voice barked, and the sound of footsteps thundered inside. "Go! Now!" Jake yelled, lunging forward as panic gripped him tightly. They rushed toward the back, adrenaline surging through him like fire. Annie was right beside him, instinctively following, while Ben took up the rear. Jake felt the walls closing in, the threat magnifying with every heartbeat. But as they barreled toward the door, another sound rumbled in the darkness that sent chills racing down Jake's spine. "Not so fast." a voice called out, a sinister chuckle trailing behind. Jake's stomach dropped as realization hit. They were trapped. With the pounding footsteps behind them, and no foreseeable escape route, Jake could only think one thing. Would they escape, or was this the moment everything changed forever? The darkness closed in tighter. The chase was far from over. The echo of that mocking voice hung in the air, a promise of danger lurking just out of sight. Jake's breath caught in his throat, and every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere left to hide. As Jake turned back toward the group, his heart thundered in his chest. "We can't stay here," he murmured urgently, pushing against the dread threatening to paralyze him. Ben, wide-eyed and trembling, nodded. "What do we do?" "Back corner." Jake pointed toward a pile of crates stacked precariously, casting a long shadow. "Maybe we can climb over." Annie's grip tightened around Jake's arm as he led them deeper into the warehouse, every footstep echoing like a drumbeat of impending doom. "I don't want to be here," she whimpered. "It's okay," Jake soothed, though his heart raced in sync with the rhythm of their footfalls. "We'll find a way out. Just stay close." As they stumbled through the shadows, the sound of footsteps grew louder, thudding on the concrete floor like a countdown to disaster. Voices mixed into a cacophony behind them. "Split up. She has to be here somewhere." Jake could feel the panic rising in his chest, an icy fist tightening around his heart. "Where are they?" he thought frantically, searching the stack of crates for any semblance of a path. Ben spotted a gap, a doorway draped in thick darkness. "Jake! Over there!" He pointed, hope igniting in his wide eyes. "Go! Now!" Jake urged, pushing Annie and Ben toward the doorway. They squeezed through, the shadows swallowing them whole, and Jake's chest tightened with each fleeting breath. As they entered the narrow space behind the crates, Jake could hear the men's voices, a mix of anger and frustration crackled through the air. "Damn it! She's around here somewhere. Keep looking." The chilling command sent a shiver down Jake's spine. Moving quietly, they scrambled into the narrow gap, hearts pounding in unison. The air was thick and stale, laced with dust, but they had no choice. This was their only chance. Suddenly, the wooden floor creaked underfoot, and Jake froze, eyes wide. He held out a finger to his lips, urging silence. They all stood still, breaths shallow, hearts hammering like a war drum. The footsteps approached the wall, something dragging across the floor behind them. "This way," he heard one of the men say. "They must have come through here." Jake's thoughts raced. They needed to move, but he didn't want to expose them until he knew their pursuers had passed. Annie clung to his side, her small body trembling. "What if they find us, Jake?" "They won't," he promised, though doubt laced his words. In that moment, desperation clawed at him harder than ever. Then, a loud crash echoed behind them. The pursuers had overturned a stack of crates, creating a loud thunderclap that shattered the tether of silence hanging over them. "Check everywhere!" Another voice shouted, panic now fueling their search. "Now! We have to go!" Jake ordered, clenching Annie's hand as they scrambled forward through the narrow corridor. As they pressed on, the light flickering through a dust-coated window began to filter in. It was a faint glow, but it grew stronger, and the promise of escape pushed him forward, despite the dread gnawing at his insides. They could hear the men closing in behind them, panting and shoving things aside in their frantic search. Almost there, but just as Jake reached for the doorknob, a shadow loomed behind. "You really thought you could escape?" Jake turned, meeting the menacing gaze of a figure emerging from the haze. And then everything changed. "Get down!" Ben shouted, pulling Annie to the floor as a voice echoed the command to search the shadows. Jake's heart pounded. Were they out of time? Would they face whatever lay beyond this door, or would they plunge deeper into the darkness of the unknown? The moment held its breath, and Jake sensed the danger curling tightly around them. Would they find a way to escape, or was hope slipping right through his fingers? Jake's skin prickled as that figure stepped closer, silhouetted against the waning light filtering through the dust. He could see the glint of cold metal in the stranger's hand, an ominous reflection of the fear spiraling through his mind. "Let her go," Jake croaked, forcing himself to step forward, trying to shield Annie and Ben with his body. He felt small and powerless, but the instinct to protect surged like wildfire. The shadow grinned, exposed teeth stark against the darkness. "You think you're in control here? You're just a scared kid playing hero." The voice dripped with disdain, piercing Jake deeper than any knife could. Jake clenched his fists, feeling the anger rise. "We're getting out of here. You want to stop us?" A low rumble of laughter echoed around them. "You think you can outrun me? You're already trapped." Before Jake could respond, the men chasing them blundered into the corridor, their eyes wide with triumph. "Look what we found," one of them sneered, raising a crowbar, the weapon glinting dangerously in the dim light. Annie whimpered, burying her face against Jake's back, her tiny hands clutching his shirt as if it could shield her from the madness. "Hold on!" Jake shouted, adrenaline surging through his veins. With a surge of determination, he lunged forward. "Run!" he instructed Ben, shoving him toward the light, knowing time was slipping away. The door only a few feet away felt like a lifeline, bright against the encroaching darkness. But as they scrambled towards it, the men surged forward, bodies colliding as they lunged. Jake felt the air crackle with tension as he turned, blocking the boy and girl from the charging figures. He'd never felt so vulnerable, standing against evil with nothing but a surge of raw courage pumping through him. "Stick together," he shouted with a throat full of fear, desperate to keep their little trio intact. They dashed toward the doorway, feeling the shadows pulling behind them, a suffocating weight of danger clawing at their heels. Ben was ahead, adrenaline fueling his steps. Annie stumbled, her small legs fighting the panic that ensnared them. Just when Jake thought they might break free, a hand shot out from behind, gripping his arm like a vice. He twisted, striking with all the force he could muster. "Let us go!" The assailant faltered, but didn't he release him? In that moment of desperation, without thinking, Jake simply lunged forward. The force sent him crashing into the door, and with one final shove, it gave way, slamming open into the blinding light outside. They stumbled into the sun's warmth, but freedom was fleeting. The men, furious and relentless, poured out behind them, roaring like beasts unleashed from captivity. The world outside felt alien, pulsating with life, but shadows still stalked them. "Run!" Jake hissed. The three of them took off, a blur of movement in an unyielding landscape of threat. The warehouse receded behind them, danger still close enough to taste, but the chase was far from over. Just as they turned a bend, a secondary figure appeared, someone unexpectedly familiar, stepping out from behind a parked vehicle. The stranger's face was etched with worry, but lined with a knowing smirk. "You all look like you could use some help." Jake's heart sank. Could he trust this person? Questions raced through his mind, battling fear and uncertainty. Who was this, and what could they possibly want? "Who are you?" Jake demanded, feeling the weight of their pursuers just behind him, closing in. The stranger took a step closer, and the air crackled with unresolved tension. "You don't know the half of it. What did that mean?" Jake felt the grip of fate tightening. Escape didn't guarantee safety. Answers were still lurking just ahead, and they could determine survival. "Where do we go now?" Jake whispered, sensing the dark tide closing in. The stranger flashed a quick, enigmatic smile, and with it, an unsettling twist of hope and trepidation. "Follow me if you want to live." But would following lead to help or more peril? The moment teetered on the edge, the future bending before them like a fragile thread. Would they dare to trust the unexpected ally, Or was it already too late? Jake's heart raced as he stared at the newcomer. The air felt thick, laden with secrets. But with pursuers hot on their heels, he had little choice. "Go!" he shouted, gesturing to Annie and Ben. The trio darted toward the stranger, who didn't miss a beat. "This way," they urged, motioning toward a narrow alleyway just beyond the glow of the streetlight. In the tangled web of shadows, they sprinted, breathless and frightened. Annie's grip on Jake's hand tightened, her small fingers trembling. Ben stayed close, glancing back nervously. The sounds of raucous laughter and shouts from their pursuers skittered across the night air. They reached the alley, and the stranger skidded to a halt, turning to watch them with penetrating eyes. In here, a door, seemingly forgotten among the bricks, swung open, revealing darkness that felt more inviting than the chaos outside. "Come on," Jake urged, but the moment they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them. They were plunged into a smothering silence, the street sounds muffled as if they'd entered another world. "What just happened?" Ben whispered, eyes wide. "Shoo!" Jake hissed, pressing a finger to his lips. His heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his gaze on the stranger. "Easy," the stranger said, raising their hands in a calming gesture. "You're safe for now." Jake narrowed his eyes, struggling to find confidence in this mysterious ally. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice low but firm. The stranger smiled, a flash of white against the darkness. "Names don't matter at the moment. What matters is you've led them straight to us." "What do you mean?" Jake echoed, panic creeping back into his skin. "They're not just after you. They want something much bigger." The stranger stepped closer, urgency pouring from them. "You were right to flee, but trust me, you need to understand the bigger picture before you can be free." "What does that mean?" Jake's mind whirled, and he felt the ground beneath him shift. Before the stranger could respond, a loud thud echoed from outside, sending a tremor through Jake's bones. The door rattled on its hinges, and a muffled voice shouted, "You think you can hide? We know you're in there." Jake's breath hitched. The fear hanging in the air morphed into a heavy fog of dread. "What do we do?" he yelled, panic bleeding into his thoughts. "Follow me," the stranger urged, darting towards another door at the opposite end of the dimly lit room. They swung it open just as the rattling continued, the sound of pounding feet growing closer. Annie looked up, her wide eyes shining in the faint light. "But I'm scared." "Stay close," Jake instructed sharply, adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was a dream turned nightmare, and he needed to be the one to lead them out. They launched into the new hallway, moving swiftly but quietly. The darkness felt alive, swirling around them with an intensity that made Jake's heart race. He could hear their pursuers shouting, searching, fueled by rage like wolves on the hunt. "Why are they after us?" Ben breathed, clutching Jake's sleeve. "Not as something related to you," the stranger replied, darting a glance back. "Time to explain everything. But first, we need to get out of here." In that moment, the door at the end of the hallway burst open, silhouetting the men behind it in the harsh light. Jake's heart plummeted. He was out of options. Would this stranger lead them to safety or into a trap? "Go!" the stranger shouted, pushing Jake toward the exit, but Jake hesitated, panic surging again. "Where?" he shouted back, feeling the walls begin to close in. "Just trust me." The stranger's voice held an urgency that was impossible to ignore. With the furious men closing in, Jake made the decision. Trust or not, the only way was forward. As they bolted through the door, Jake felt the echoes of uncertainty linger. Behind him, their pursuers let out a roar of anger. With adrenaline and dread woven tightly within him, Jake whispered to the night, "Please let this lead us to safety, or at least the truth." And as they disappeared into the twist of shadows, the question, loomed. How deep did the secrets go, and who were they truly dealing with? Jake sprinted ahead, Annie and Ben trailing just behind. The pulse of their footsteps echoed off the cold concrete walls, a gruesome heartbeat in the stillness of the narrow hall. Each breath felt heavy, filled with the dank mustiness of the place they were now in. "Keep moving," the stranger shouted, leading them through a dim corridor shrouded in uncertainty. Their urgency crackled in the air. Just moments ago, they were panicked, breathing in the chaos of the outside world. Now, they were tossed into darkness, but not without a glimmer of hope lingering in escape. "What do we need to know?" Jake called over his shoulder, desperation lacing his voice. The stranger turned for a fleeting moment, their expression serious. "It's about your family, Jake. The reason you're hunted isn't random. It's rooted deep, and it runs in your blood." "What do you mean, my blood?" Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine, mixing with the fear bubbling in his gut. "Keep running," the stranger urged again. "We'll get to that later." Jake shivered, contemplating the weight of those words. Blood? The idea tangled with a reality he couldn't grasp just yet. Behind them, the sound of pursuit had transformed. It was no longer mere shouting, it was a hunt, primal and fierce. A sharp turn at the end of the hallway led to a wooden stairwell, old and creaking, stretching upward into darkness. The stranger pushed them ahead, their urgency tightening the frayed edges of Jake's nerves. "We need to reach the rooftop. They won't follow us there." "Why not?" Ben asked, fear evident in his voice. "They can't keep a low profile if it's up there," the stranger replied, the tension palpable. They climbed quickly, the steps groaning under their weight. Each footfall surged adrenaline through Jake's veins, urging him forward. The exit loomed just above, a promise of fresh air and escape. They burst through the door at the top, gasping for breath, on a rooftop that overlooked the city's skyline. Lights twinkled below them, unaware of the chaos unfolding just feet away. For a moment, the view stole Jake's breath away. But he quickly looked around, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. "What now?" he panted. "Get down," the stranger warned, shoving them behind a low wall. A heavy thud echoed, followed by the sound of shuffling. It was clear someone had followed them. Annie shivered beside Jake, her small frame trembling against his side. "I'm scared," she murmured. "I know, Annie." "Just stay close," he whispered, attempting to provide comfort while struggling to curb his own panic. The footsteps grew louder, and Jake clenched his fists. "What do they want?" he demanded again, trailing off into a whisper when he realized they weren't far away. The artifact, the stranger's voice was strained, a breathless urgency lacing their words. "It connects the three of you. It's why they'll stop at nothing to find you." The stranger's revelation hit Jake hard, twisting in his gut like a knife. "Artifact? What do you mean?" "I'll explain, but we don't have time. We need to move. Down the fire escape now." Before Jake could respond, a booming voice called from below. "We know you're up there. This ends now." The stranger turned sharply, eyes wild with a mix of fear and determination. "Come on!" They jumped into action. Each moment felt like a lifetime, fear and uncertainty clinging to Jake like a shadow. As they scrambled down the rusty fire escape, Jake's heart raced. "What if we don't make it?" he thought, terror bubbling. But there was no time to dwell on that. The exit loomed closer. They were mere moments away from safety. Yet, a nagging question echoed in Jake's mind. What was this artifact, and how was his family entwined within such a dangerous web? Tension crackled as they descended, entwined in a desperate race against time. And when he reached the bottom, just steps away from another door, one thought consumed him. They were running toward freedom, but was it really freedom at all? The door swung open, revealing not just an exit, but the unknown ahead. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow alley that seemed to stretch into darkness. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked pavement and the distant echo of sirens. Jake hesitated, muscles tense, his breath quickening. The stranger stepped through first, pulling them into the shadows, but Jake lingered for just a heartbeat longer, uncertainty gripping him. "Let us go," the stranger urged, glancing back, eyes wild. They had barely set foot in the alley before the far side of the rooftop erupted with noise, shouts chasing them into the night. Jake turned, grabbing Annie's hand tightly, while Ben stayed close, fear etched on both their faces. "What if they find us?" Ben whispered, anxiety spilling over. "They want tea," the stranger asserted, though Jake noted the tremor in their voice. "Not here. Just keep moving." The alley twisted sharply, a warren of jagged corners and dimly lit patches. They ducked behind a dumpster, fingers trembling as the faint sounds of footsteps echoed in the distance. Each thudding beat sent shivers down Jake's spine, making the hairs on his neck stand on end. "What is this artifact?" Jake pressed, desperation edging into his tone. "What is special about us?" The stranger swayed slightly, catching their breath while keeping an eye on the entrance. "You wouldn't understand, it's too dangerous. But it ties your fate together. You're not just running to survive. You're running to uncover something bigger." "Bigger?" Annie squeaked, her small voice trembling. "Like what? A monster?" "Monsters don't exist," Jake said, though he felt a chill run down his spine. But his words were unconvincing. They were deep in a world that felt monstrous already. As they pressed on, the alley opened up into a street bustling with nighttime activity. The vibrant lights from nearby shops cast long shadows, but they were exposed in this moment, vulnerability hanging thick in the air. Jake knew they had to move fast. Suddenly a sharp shout rang out behind them. They went this way. An unexpected surge of panic ignited Jake's instincts, and he turned into a narrow side street, adrenaline propelling them forward. "Where are we going?" Ben panted, the urgency increasing as they skidded around another corner. "Trust me, there's a safe house close. We can hide there for a bit," the stranger said, looking intensely at Jake, hoping to instill confidence. But the way their eyes darted around told a different story. "What is really happening?" Jake demanded again, frustration boiling over. "Why can't you just tell us the truth?" "Because the truth can kill you." The stranger's voice broke, and in that instant, Jake felt the weight of terrifying stakes pressing down on him. They stumbled into a cluster of parked cars, hiding just as another group of footsteps blasted through the alley behind them. "This is insane," Ben whispered, a hint of despair creeping into his words. "Just hold on," Jake said, feeling the tightness in his throat as he crouched lower, willing the pounding of his heart to quiet. A flicker of light caught his attention, a glow from a storefront a few feet away. But as quickly as it appeared, it flickered out. Darkness enveloped them, blending with the chaos, and time hung heavy. "Listen, you two," the stranger said softly, leaning in. "If they catch us, don't fight. Just run. Promise me." Jake felt a knot tighten in his gut as he nodded. "We promise." Moments passed like hours, dread coiling around them with each breath. As they huddled close, something shifted in the shadows, a movement that made his stomach drop. They weren't alone anymore. A soft rustling, and a shadow separated itself from the darkness, creeping closer. "Who is there?" Jake demanded, standing suddenly, eyes wide, adrenaline coursing as he braced for the worst. "Just me," a familiar voice whispered, barely audible in the silence that followed, a voice that appended everything Jake thought he knew. "Who?" he pressed, heart hammering in his chest. The darkness shifted once more, revealing a face he couldn't believe he'd see again. And just like that, the facade of safety they'd clung to began to crumble. It was a moment thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. Jake froze, his breath hitching as he took in the woman before him. It was Sarah, his sister. the sister he thought was lost forever. "Is it really you?" he gasped, disbelief painting his face. Annie's small form clung to Jake's leg, confusion washing over her. Ben looked between the two, eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Why are you here?" he pressed, not entirely able to shake the anxiety lodged in his gut. "I had to find you, Jake," Sarah said, stepping closer, her expression a mix of relief and desperation. "It's about the artifact, and what they want from you. It's all connected in ways you can't even imagine." The air buzzed with unspoken words, and Jake struggled to process everything. He felt Annie's trembling fingers gripping him tighter, her innocent eyes flickering with fear. "What is this artifact?" he finally managed, his voice low and cautious. "Your family, there was a legacy, a history. It belonged to Mom and Dad, something precious that she hid away. The people after you know all of this. They want control of what has been found." Fear felt like a brick in Jake's stomach. "What do you mean? Control? What kind of control?" Sarah took a deep breath, looking over her shoulder at the chaos outside, then back at Jake. "They wanted you, Jake. They believe you could lead them to it. They think you're the key. But they're using Annie as leverage. She has got a part in this, whether she knows it or not." Jake clenched his fists, feeling the anger roiling inside him. "They're not taking her from me. I want to let it happen." As sirens wailed closer, time felt fleeting, ticking away like a clock counting down to disaster. Sarah grabbed Jake's arm. "I can help. But we have to move quickly. There's a safe route out of this chaos, I know it, but we can't stay here." "Where's the safe house?" Ben interjected, glancing nervously at the shadows looming in the dark alley. "Follow me." Sarah turned, sprinting with purpose. Jake felt a swell of hope, igniting his spirit even amid turmoil. He grabbed Annie's hand tightly, urging her along, with Ben trailing closely behind. They ducked into a narrow passage that led to the rear of a small bakery, the scent of fresh dough mingling with the lingering fear. Jake felt a pulse of determination this had to end. Inside, they slipped past the unseen nature of the panic outside, winding through the stockroom, where flour dust settled in cloudy swirls. Sarah's voice was steady as she guided them. "Stay quiet. Just follow my lead." Each step felt like a victory against the darkness still chasing them. But just as they thought they could breathe again, the loud crash of wood splitting apart echoed from the front of the shop. "They're here." Jake's mind raced. The bakery was a cramped space. There was nowhere to hide. But then he saw a small door leading down to a cellar. "In here!" he shouted, leading the group downward as panic surged behind them. The footsteps grew louder. They tumbled down, Sarah pushing the door shut just as a voice called, "We know you're in there. Find them!" Shocking voices echoed around them, heavy with malice. Jake pressed against the door, his breath quickening. "They're going to find us. I can't let them hurt you." His eyes searched Annie's, where fright and trust intermingled. "We will be safe," he murmured as Sarah moved to the back of the cellar and pulled out an emergency stash of supplies. "The way out has to be through here. We just need to wait for the right moment," Sarah whispered urgently. Minutes felt like hours as darkness enveloped them. Their breaths echoed as tension coiled tight. Time seemed irrelevant down here. Then, just as hopelessness threatened to creep in, the vibration of footsteps upstairs faded slightly. "We need to go," Sarah urged. "Now!" Opening a hidden trapdoor, she gestured for them to go ahead. As they scrambled upward, Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. They were nearly free. When they emerged outside, the sun was low over the city, drenched in golds and oranges. A moment of beauty amid the chaos. "Over there." Sarah pointed to a small van parked discreetly nearby. "We'll get out of the city." Heart pounding, Jake helped Annie and Ben into the van, climbing in last and shutting the door hurriedly. Suddenly, a power surge shot through him as he glanced back at Sarah, her determined expression unwavering. "Go!" she ordered the driver, and the van lurched forward, jostling them. With each passing mile, the tension slowly ebbed away. They were out of the immediate danger, a world of possibilities stretching ahead. Jake looked at Annie, clinging to Ben, her fears momentarily shelved. "We did it," he whispered, the weight of it washing over him like a wave. But as they drove farther away, Jake felt another tension rising, questions left unanswered, the nagging thought of what they were truly running from gnawing at him. But in that moment, he squeezed Annie's hand. "We're safe for now, and we'll find out the truth together." And with that, as they drove toward the unknown, a bond forged from fear, courage, and love began to bloom anew. Freedom was just the beginning. With hope flickering like the last light of a sunset, the journey had just begun. Now here's your moment. You need to subscribe immediately, so you don't miss the next thrilling chapters. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm as fire. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about Jake and Annie's journey ahead. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this amazing conclusion. Be a part of this community and continue supporting us on this wild ride.